Actress and singer Diane Carroll has passed away, her daughter revealing that cancer claimed her life. And who could forget the heartbreaking moment when Aaliyah's fans, in stunned silence, watched her casket descend the church steps. One young girl, overwhelmed with grief, collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital. They were more than stars, they were symbols of Black beauty and strength, shining brightly in a world that rarely gave them space to be vulnerable. But behind the red carpets and radiant smiles hid a haunting truth. Many of these legendary women battled devastating illnesses in silence. Why did they hide their suffering until the very end? Was it pride? Pressure? Or the cruel demands of an unforgiving industry? Tonight, we pull back the curtain on the private pain of 21 breathtaking Black actresses who took their secrets with them to the grave. Their stories are not just tragic, they're a testament to the quiet strength that lived behind the spotlight. Dorothy Dandridge, the death bill. Dorothy Dandridge was more than just a symbol of beauty, she was a trailblazer, the first Black woman ever nominated for an Oscar in a leading role for Carmen Jones in 1954. With radiant brown skin, magnetic eyes, and a presence that lit up the screen, she captivated 1950s Hollywood. But behind the flawless facade was a woman slowly unraveling. On the morning of September 8, 1965, Dorothy was found lifeless in her modest Hollywood apartment, sprawled across the bed in haunting stillness. There were no signs of struggle, just a single sheet of paper lying on the floor. A telephone bill. At first glance, it seemed ordinary, but friends later revealed that it wasn't just a list of charges, it was a map of desperation. Scrawled across its margins were phone numbers, scratched in haste, calls to therapists, crisis hotlines, distant friends, and family members. Some rang unanswered. Others were silent pleas too subtle to be understood. That bill, her final document, wasn't about money. It was a quiet record of her final outreach, the last flickers of a woman drowning in loneliness and pain. Dorothy had hidden her suffering with grace, wearing a smile while carrying the unbearable weight of depression and isolation. Her death was not loud or scandalous. It was quiet, tragic, and heartbreakingly invisible. What the world lost that day wasn't just a glamorous star. It was a soul crying for help in a world that didn't know how to listen. The true depth of her sadness may never be fully known, but in that forgotten bill, her silence spoke volumes. Diane Carroll, the Queen of Julia and the secrets she took to her grave. With her captivating beauty and undeniable talent, Diane Carroll shattered barriers and redefined what was possible for Black women in Hollywood. She wasn't just a star, she was a pioneer. As the first African-American woman to win a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a television role for Julia, Diane lit the path for generations to follow. But even as she stood in the spotlight, not all of her truth was visible to the world. On October 4, 2019, Diane Carroll passed away at the age of 84. The scene was heartbreakingly poetic. She was found peacefully reclined in her favorite armchair, eyes fixed on the television, watching reruns of Julia, the very show that made her an icon. But what stunned even her closest fans was the revelation that followed. In her final years, Diane had been quietly battling breast cancer. Few knew. Determined to protect the image of strength and elegance she had so carefully built, she confided in only one close friend, entrusting them with the burden of her diagnosis and strict instructions to keep her struggle private. She refused to let the world see her weakened. For Diane, dignity wasn't just a performance, it was a final act of defiance. Her passing marked the end of a brilliant era, but also uncovered the quiet tragedy of a woman who carried her burdens in silence. Even in death, Diane Carroll remained a symbol of grace, resilience, and unshakable pride. Sicily Tyson, a quiet farewell to a towering legend. More than just an actress, Sicily Tyson was a monument in motion, graceful, fierce, and unshakably dignified. Her unforgettable performances in Sounder, 1972, and the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, 1974, didn't just win awards, they shattered barriers. With every role, she redefined what it meant to be a Black woman in Hollywood. And yet, even in her final moments, she chose grace over spectacle. In the still hours of January 28, 2021, Sicily passed away at age 96. No chaos, no pain, just calm. She took her final pill, settled into her favorite chair, and drifted into eternal rest. When loved ones arrived, they found her at peace. But behind that serenity was a secret battle she never made public: breast cancer. For years, Sicily quietly endured the illness, never once breaking the powerful image of strength she had become to millions. She feared that revealing her struggle might undo the very legacy she had fought so hard to build. Even as her health faded, she pressed on, working, smiling, inspiring. Just days before her passing, she received an honorary award, a final tribute to a lifetime of excellence. Then, almost poetically, she let go. Her death wasn't just the end of a life, it was the closing of a chapter written in resilience and sacrifice. But it also begs a heartbreaking question. How many other brilliant Black actresses suffered in silence, hiding their pain while the world applauded their strength? Get ready to uncover those names. Their stories may break your heart, but they deserve to be heard. Ruby Dee, the secret behind hospital doors. Ruby Dee wasn't just an actress, she was a force. From a raisin in the sun to American Gangster, she brought grace, fire, and dignity to every role she played. A fierce advocate for civil rights and a cultural icon of Black excellence, Ruby's legacy stretched far beyond the screen. But behind the scenes, she carried a burden the world never saw. On June 11, 2014, at the age of 91, Ruby quietly slipped away in a New York hospital. Just days after finishing what would be her final treatment, her passing came softly and without fanfare. When her loved ones entered the room, they found her lying peacefully in bed, her hands still wrapped tightly around that of her late husband, Ossie Davis, almost as if she could still feel him there. The room was hushed, the silence heavy with reverence. In her final years, Ruby chose to keep her illness private. She had been quietly battling breast cancer, a truth she asked Ossie to shield from the press. She didn't want the world to see her as fragile or weakened. She wanted to be remembered as strong, vibrant, and unwavering, just as she had lived. Her death marked the end of an era, but also revealed the quiet strength of a woman who bore her pain in silence, never letting it define her. Ruby Dee's final act wasn't on a stage. It was the silent, courageous decision to face death with the same quiet dignity with which she lived. Juanita Moore, The Hidden Pills and a Silent Goodbye. Juanita Moore, graceful, resilient, and unforgettable. Best known for her heartbreaking performance in Imitation of Life, 1959, she stood as a beacon of quiet strength and beauty in an industry that offered few roles, and even fewer accolades, to Black women. With each role she took, Juanita didn't just perform, she uplifted an entire generation. But behind her poised smile was a secret she carried to the very end. When she passed away in 2001 at the age of 87, her family and friends were stunned. There had been no hospital stays, no public battles, just a sudden, almost serene stillness. She was found lying peacefully in her room, as if simply asleep. But the truth behind that peaceful image was far more devastating. Juanita Moore had been battling cancer in silence. She told no one. Not her friends, not her colleagues, not even her closest family members. She feared that revealing her illness would overshadow her legacy, reduce her to a symbol of weakness instead of the powerhouse she had always been. In secret, she made late-night visits to doctors. She slipped into pharmacies under cover of darkness, quietly buying painkillers to keep the suffering at bay. Even as the disease stole her strength, she refused to let it show. She worked, she smiled, she carried on, determined to protect the image she'd spent a lifetime building. And when she finally slipped away, it wasn't just her passing that broke hearts, it was the realization that she had suffered alone. That the same woman who gave so much of herself on screen had hidden her own pains so completely. Her quiet exit left a haunting question behind. How much did she endure, smiling, performing, inspiring, while privately facing the unimaginable? Nichelle Nichols, the tragedy of a relentless spirit. To the world, she was Lieutenant Uhura, graceful, bold, and groundbreaking. But beyond the screen, Nichelle Nichols was a force of quiet revolution. As one of the first Black women in a leading television role, she didn't just change science fiction, she helped reshape society. Her role on Star Trek inspired generations, and her work alongside NASA and the civil rights movement made her a symbol of hope and progress. But even legends face silent battles. On July 30, 2022, the world lost a pioneer. At age 89, Nichelle passed away peacefully in her home in Silver City, New Mexico. The first to find her was her son, Kyle Johnson, who had stayed close through her declining health. She had been battling heart disease, but true to her nature, she bore the pain quietly, never wanting to burden others. In one heartbreaking act of strength, she once checked herself into the hospital without telling anyone, shielding her loved ones from the weight of her struggle. Nichelle Nichols left this world the same way she lived in it. Fiercely independent, deeply loving, and profoundly courageous. Her final chapter was written not with grand farewells, but with grace, dignity, and the unshakable heart of a woman who had spent her life opening doors for others, even as some closed around her. Lena Horne, the eternal slumber of a beauty icon. Lena Horne wasn't just a star, she was a force of nature. With hypnotic beauty and a voice that could melt even the coldest heart, she shattered racial barriers in Hollywood and lit up the screen in classics like Stormy Weather. But behind the spotlight and standing ovations was a woman carrying a quiet burden. Few knew that Lena had been fighting a long, private battle with illness for years. On a serene morning in May 2010, at the age of 92, Lena Horne passed away peacefully in her home. When family and friends arrived, they weren't ready for the stillness that greeted them. The room was filled with soft, natural light, windows open to welcome the morning sun. And there she was, silent, graceful, as if only sleeping. No pain, no struggle, just a hush that felt sacred, as if time itself had paused to honor her. Like many legends of her era, Lena had waged a quiet war with breast cancer. In her final years, she leaned on painkillers. Never in public, never where anyone could see. Each morning, before the world awakened to her brilliance, she took the pills that helped her stand, sing, and smile. Even her closest loved ones had no idea. Because Lena Horne didn't just perform on stage, she performed in life, fiercely protecting the image she had spent a lifetime building. Maya Angelou, the hidden truth behind her powerful words. Maya Angelou wasn't just a literary icon, she was a force of nature. With timeless works like I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, she gave voice to the voiceless and strength to the weary. Her words lifted millions, yet behind that fierce resilience was a private pain few ever saw. On May 28, 2014, Maya passed away peacefully at the age of 86, surrounded by family and love. Only after her death did her loved ones reveal the truth. She had been quietly battling cancer for years. True to her spirit, Maya never spoke publicly of her illness. She refused to let the world witness her suffering. Even in her final chapter, she chose dignity, grace, and creative fire. Maya Angelou didn't just write poetry, she lived it. A warrior of words, a woman of unwavering strength, and a legacy that will echo for generations. Tamara Dobson, The Quiet Fall of Cleopatra Jones. Tamara Dobson lit up the screen as Cleopatra Jones, the fierce, stunning icon of 1970s blaxploitation cinema. Towering, elegant, and unapologetically powerful, she became a symbol of feminine strength and independence. But behind that commanding presence was a woman quietly waging a battle the world never saw. In 2006, Tamara's sudden death stunned everyone who knew her. She had missed an important appointment that morning, something completely out of character. When her housekeeper entered her bedroom, he found her lying still in bed, her face peaceful, almost as if she were simply resting. At first, he thought she was asleep. But as the seconds passed and she didn't stir, the truth sank in. Tamara was gone. No signs of distress, no cry for help. Just silence. Only after her death did the heartbreaking truth emerge. Tamara had been silently fighting multiple sclerosis and pneumonia for years. She kept her illness hidden, slipping away for treatments at odd hours, carefully masking the pain behind her radiant smile. On one occasion, she traveled to a distant hospital alone, received treatment, and returned as if nothing had happened, graceful, poised, untouchable. She bore her suffering with such dignity that even those closest to her never saw her struggle. Now, all that remains is the aching memory of a brilliant star who shone boldly in public, but bore her pain in the shadows, never asking for pity, only leaving behind grace. Roxy Roker, a final rest in silence. Roxy Roker, best known for her groundbreaking role on The Jeffersons, wasn't just a talented actress, she was a trailblazer. As one of the first Black women to gain mainstream recognition on American television, she helped shatter barriers and paved the way for generations of performers to come. But on the morning of December 2, 1995, the woman who had inspired so many was found in a moment of haunting stillness. Friends and family had come by to visit, expecting to be greeted by Roxy's familiar warmth and vibrant energy. Instead, they discovered her lying peacefully on her favorite couch in the living room. Her face was serene, as if she had simply drifted off into a deep sleep. There were no warning signs, no cries for help, just a quiet, unsettling calm. When someone softly called her name and she didn't stir, reality hit like a wave. Roxy was gone. What most didn't know was that Roxy Roker had been fighting a private war with breast cancer for years. She bore the weight of her illness in silence, never letting it dim the light she shared with the world. She continued to work, smile, and uplift others, never once revealing the pain she carried. Even when close friends noticed her growing fatigue, she brushed it off with grace, choosing privacy over pity. In the end, Roxy passed the way she lived, with quiet strength, unwavering dignity, and a fierce determination to protect those she loved from her burden. Her final moment, resting peacefully in her home, was not just an end, but the final act of a woman who lived life entirely on her own terms. Esther Rall, Eternal Sleep and the Secret She Took to Her Grave. Esther Rall, the beloved matriarch of Good Times, wasn't just a brilliant actress, she was a symbol of grace, strength, and unshakable dignity. But behind that radiant smile was a battle she never let the world see. On the quiet morning of November 17, 1998, Esther was found in her favorite armchair, nestled beside the glow of a crackling fireplace. An open book rested gently on her lap, its final pages unread. Her face looked peaceful, almost like she had simply drifted off to sleep. But the truth was more complicated. When a family member picked up the book, a small vial tumbled out. Inside were white pills, medication she had secretly taken for years. Esther had been quietly fighting diabetes, choosing to hide her illness from the world. She feared the public might see her differently, or that casting directors might think her fragile. She carried that secret with quiet determination, never asking for pity, never slowing down. Esther Rall was committed to her craft until the very end, choosing dignity, privacy, and legacy over sympathy. Even in her final moments, she was exactly what she had always been, a woman of extraordinary strength. Zara Cully, the quiet exit of a television legend. Zara Cully, best remembered as the sharp-tongued yet beloved Mother Jefferson on The Jeffersons, was far more than a sitcom star. She was a trailblazer. One of the earliest African-American performers to break through in American film and television, Zara brought dignity, depth, and authenticity to every role she touched. But on the morning of February 28, 1978, her final scene played out far from the cameras. She was found in the quiet of her Los Angeles home, seated near a vanity table adorned with fading photographs, snapshots of a luminous past. What she left behind was more than memories. Tucked away beside her was an unsent letter, its inked lines shaky, revealing a heartbreaking secret she never shared publicly, a long, private battle with lung cancer. Zara never wanted an audience for her suffering. As her illness progressed, she withdrew from the spotlight, choosing solitude over sympathy. Only a handful of close friends and family knew the truth, and they were sworn to silence. She wanted the world to remember her strength, her fire, her brilliance, not her decline. Her passing was quiet, almost too quiet for a woman whose voice had once echoed through living rooms across America. A final bow not on stage, but in solitude. A legend, fading not in scandal or spectacle, but with the same grace and control that defined her life. Zara Cully lived for the craft, and left before it could witness her fall. Isabel Sanford, the quiet goodbye of a television trailblazer. Best known as the beloved Louise Jefferson, Isabel Sanford wasn't just a TV star, she was a pioneer. As one of the first black women to portray a confident, no-nonsense matriarch on primetime television, she helped redefine what strength looked like on screen. But behind the scenes, Isabel's final chapter was far quieter than anyone expected. In July 2004, she passed away in the stillness of her modest Los Angeles home. No press, no headlines, just silence. That afternoon, her neighbor Martha stopped by with a plate of warm cookies, as she had done so many times before. But this time, there was no cheerful voice greeting her. The front door was slightly ajar. Inside, Isabel was slumped peacefully in her favorite armchair, an open book lying face down on the floor. Days later, a small wooden box tucked away in her desk revealed the truth: delicate vials and pale pink pills prescribed for heart failure. She had kept her condition hidden, determined to remain as resilient and dignified as the women she brought to life on screen. In the end, she did just that, living with grace and leaving this world the way she had lived in it. On her own terms, with quiet strength and dignity. Nell Carter, a deadly melody in a music box. Nell Carter, the powerhouse singer and Tony Award-winning actress, lit up the stage and screen with a voice that could shake the rafters and a presence that demanded attention. Through the highs and lows of the 1980s and 90s, she stood as a beacon of talent, resilience, and soul. But in January 2003, that radiant light dimmed in heartbreaking silence. That morning, Maria, the florist who brought Nell her favorite white orchids each week, arrived as usual. But something was off. There was no laughter, no humming from inside. The front door was ajar. Nervously, Maria stepped in and found Nell, motionless in her armchair, a silk scarf draped on the floor beside her like a final whisper. Later, tucked in her bedside drawer, a tiny music box was discovered. Inside, beneath its velvet lining, lay a blood glucose meter and a bundle of used insulin needles, silent evidence of a secret struggle. Nell had been quietly battling type 2 diabetes for years, never letting it show. She left the world the way she lived, gracefully, and on her own terms. What remains is her unforgettable voice, the echoes of jazz drifting through time, and a single bouquet of white orchids, a tribute to the strength she never asked to be praised for. Whitney Houston, a voice from heaven, a heart in pain. She was the queen of power ballads, a once-in-a-generation talent whose voice could stop time. With iconic hits like I Will Always Love You and Greatest Love of All, Whitney didn't just sing, she soared. But behind the spotlight and standing ovations was a woman quietly unraveling. On February 11, 2012, the world lost her. She was found alone in a hotel room, her body motionless on the bed, a golden microphone resting on the floor, as if it had slipped from tired hands. Later, a forgotten cassette tape surfaced, filled with haunting melodies and raw, unreleased confessions. It was a glimpse into the soul of an icon who had been suffering in silence. Whitney Houston wasn't just a superstar, she was a wounded angel, carrying invisible scars. Her death wasn't loud or dramatic. It was a soft, heartbreaking silence, the final note of a life filled with music, pain, and secrets no one truly heard. Aaliyah, the hidden truths behind her final flight. She was the princess of R&B, an angelic voice, a mesmerizing presence, and a rising star whose light burned too bright to last. At just 22, Aaliyah had already conquered the charts and graced the silver screen. But on August 25, 2001, everything changed in an instant. After filming a music video in the Bahamas, Aaliyah boarded a small plane bound for the US and never made it home. The crash that claimed her life shocked the world, but what came to light afterward only deepened the heartbreak. Behind her radiant smile, Aaliyah had been quietly battling a serious eye condition that required surgery, something she never spoke about publicly. She didn't want pity or for her health struggles to overshadow her career. She chose to keep that part of herself hidden, even from those closest to her. Her tragic death wasn't just the loss of a beloved artist, it was the silencing of a voice that still had so much left to say. Aaliyah's dreams were just taking flight, and with her, they vanished into the sky, leaving behind only questions, what-ifs, and the haunting truth that some secrets are carried to the grave. Florence Ballard, the Supreme who died with a broken heart. Florence Ballard was more than just a founding member of the Supremes, she was their soul. With a powerhouse voice and magnetic stage presence, she helped shape the sound of the 1960s. But behind the glamour and chart-topping hits was a woman quietly unraveling. Despite being essential to the group's rise, Florence was pushed aside, forced out of the spotlight she helped create. Her death in 1976 at just 32 years old sent shockwaves through the music world. Found lifeless in her home, there had been no warning, no cries for help. Only later did her family reveal the truth. Florence had been living with high blood pressure and other serious health issues for years, all hidden behind a brave smile. She kept her suffering to herself, refusing to let the world see her pain. Florence Ballard's story is one of brilliance dimmed too soon, a haunting reminder of how fame can lift you up, then leave you behind. A voice that once soared was silenced far too early, carrying with it heartbreak, secrets, and a legacy the world is only beginning to understand. Minnie Ripperton, a voice silenced too soon. Minnie Ripperton, the angelic voice behind the timeless hit Lovin' You, was more than just a singer, she was a phenomenon. Her soaring 5-octave range left audiences breathless, and her music carried a soul-stirring magic that few could match. But behind that radiant smile and heavenly voice was a woman quietly fighting a battle she knew she might not win. Diagnosed with breast cancer in her late 20s, Minnie bravely chose to share her illness with the world, becoming one of the first celebrities to speak openly about the disease. Yet even in her honesty, she kept much of the struggle to herself, shielding the world from the full weight of her pain and instead offering only light, love, and grace. On July 12, 1979, at just 31 years old, Minnie Ripperton passed away. After her death, family members discovered deeply personal notes and drawings tucked away, private expressions of her suffering, her hope, and her heartbreak. These final traces revealed the quiet courage of a woman who carried the weight of her mortality with elegance and strength. Minnie Ripperton wasn't just lost to illness. She was stolen from a world that had only begun to witness her brilliance. Her death remains a devastating tragedy, a reminder of just how fleeting beauty can be. But her voice, her spirit, and her message live on, echoing through every note she left behind. Secrets in a Prop Box. Sinclair, best known for her unforgettable roles in Coming to America and as a voice in The Lion King, was more than just an actress, she was a force of nature. With every performance, she lit up the screen with strength, grace, and an unmistakable spark that left audiences spellbound. But in 1995, the world lost her quietly at the age of 57. What no one knew, what even her closest friends never suspected, was that behind the fierce characters and radiant smile, Sinclair had been privately battling leukemia for years. After her death, loved ones sorting through her belongings discovered something unexpected, a worn prop box tucked away, inside of which was a small, yellowed notebook. The pages were filled with shaky handwriting and haunting sketches, not scripts or rehearsal notes, but symbols, metaphors, and reflections of a battle she never spoke of. It was her hidden diary of pain, processed through art. Sinclair chose to face her illness with quiet courage, never seeking pity or spotlight. Her passing wasn't just a loss to the entertainment world, it was a heart-wrenching reminder of how deeply she poured her private sorrow into public brilliance, turning suffering into beauty that will echo for generations. Barbara McNair, the voice that hid the pain. Barbara McNair was the very picture of grace, a stunning voice of the 60s and 70s, a radiant presence on both stage and screen. Audiences adored her for her warmth, her talent, and the effortless beauty she brought to every performance. But behind the glamour, Barbara was fighting a silent war. In her final years, she endured the agonizing toll of throat cancer, quietly, courageously, and without complaint. She never let the pain show. Instead, she kept performing, pouring her soul into every note, determined to leave her audience with nothing but brilliance. In 2007, at the age of 72, she slipped away quietly, her passing cloaked in the same dignity with which she lived. Barbara McNair's story is one of quiet resilience, a haunting reminder of the private battles so many artists fight behind the curtain, and the strength it takes to shine while suffering in silence. Ethel Waters, a silent tragedy in a small purse. Ethel Waters was more than just a powerhouse singer or a pioneering actress. She was a force of nature, a woman who broke barriers and redefined black artistry in the 20th century. But behind the curtain of fame and applause, her final act was heartbreakingly quiet. In 1977, at the age of 80, Waters passed away in her modest Riverside apartment. Few knew she had been waging a silent war with heart disease. Night after night, she endured chest pains and struggled for breath, yet she never stopped contributing to her craft. She chose to suffer in silence, wrapping her pain in grace, turning it into performances filled with soul and sorrow. When loved ones went through her belongings, they found a small, worn purse, always clutched in her hand. Inside, behind an old photo of her younger self, were scattered medical receipts and scribbled doctor's appointments. That little purse was more than an accessory. It was her secret sanctuary, the quiet witness to her private battles. Ethel Waters's greatest tragedy wasn't just the suffering she hid, it was the unanswered question her life left behind. Did she ever truly find peace? As we say goodbye to her and to 21 other dazzling black stars whose lights once lit up the stage and screen, we're reminded that fame never shields one from pain. These were not just icons, not just breathtakingly beautiful and gifted women, they were human. Women who carried their own heartaches, secrets, and struggles beneath the spotlight's glow. So we ask you, which story moved you the most? Which star's journey brought tears to your eyes? Share your thoughts in the comments and help us peel back the layers of glamour to uncover the truth behind the legends. Let these stories be more than forgotten footnotes. Let them be tributes to courage, to resilience, and to the fire that burned inside these remarkable women until their very last breath.